Is in our midst. He is and ever shall be. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity 24 hours a day.
This is Everyday Orthodox with your host, Elisa Bielatich Davis. We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ, and as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is Sunday, October 15th, 2023, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm Elisa Bielatich Davis, and you are listening to Everyday Orthodox. We get together here every Sunday night to meet another everyday Orthodox Christian. And I think this is sort of our way of building community through conversation. Because, you know, we Orthodox in North America, we are scattered about a little bit. We have a lot of different jurisdictions. So you might have a next door neighbor who is also Orthodox and have no idea. I had a neighbor once who I did not know was Orthodox. And one day I saw she was wearing an no idea she was Orthodox. So see, there you go. You know, it's so easy not to get to know our brothers and sisters in other jurisdictions who are maybe worshiping on different calendars or in different languages, or maybe they're doing the exact same thing we are, but just right down the street. So I think it's just a beautiful opportunity for us right here. Every week, we find another Orthodox Christian and we just sit down and talk. And, you know, it's not a topical show. We don't argue about anything. We're just here to get to know people. And I find that people tend to be pretty fascinating. I love, you know, sitting down at coffee hour and talking to people. I find that there are people I've known for years. If you sit down and start asking the right questions, all of a sudden you find out they've been amazing places. They've done crazy jobs you had no idea they had done. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm really glad that you've joined us. And I hope that you'll be coming back every Sunday night to join us. You know, you can watch us live on YouTube or archived later on YouTube at the Ancient Faith Ministries channel. Of course, we're streaming on the AFR app and on the Ancient Faith website, as well as the Facebook page for Ancient Faith Ministries. And of course, you're welcome to call. You can join this conversation. Give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. And you can join the conversation. You can ask our caller any questions you might have. And the beautiful Matushka Trudy Richter will answer your call, and she will patch you right through so that you can join us. And so without any further ado, let me tell you who our guest is tonight. We actually have spoken with this guest before, but he's retired now, and I want to find out what he's up to. So I called him back, and it's John Maddox. He, of course, founded Ancient Faith Ministries. He was the CEO until not too long ago, just over a year ago. John stepped down, or less than a year ago, I guess. John stepped down. And I want to know what he's been up to. And I think he's been traveling a bit, he and Tanya, and he's up to some new stuff. So we'll let him tell you about it, though. So without any further ado, welcome to the program, John.
Well, thank you, Elisa. What a joy to be on one of my favorite shows. I love Everyday Orthodox, and you do such a great job with your guests and helping us get to know people that we wouldn't otherwise have the chance to get to know. So it's great to be here.
Well, thanks, John. And thank you really for giving us a chance to even try this, honestly. You know, when we first talked about a show, the assumption was that it would have to be topical or something like that. And I was like,
Right.
you know, I don't want to argue with anyone. I just want to ask them about themselves.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you taking a risk on it. This is our 201st episode. So
It's amazing. Congratulations, by the way. I did
Well,
listen to the 200th. It was amazing. It was so fun.
Thank you. It was fun having my daughter on. That was really neat.
Yeah, that was
But
good.
but I think you and I kind of thought it might be harder to find guests. Oh gosh, how will we find someone every week?
Right. Yeah.
I'm booked out for months. Like there are just constantly people. And then, our wonderful listeners will send in a message and they'll say, listen, there's this guy at my parish.
Yep.
You got to meet. And it's just fantastic. It's been wonderful. It's been really easy.
Hey, I've even sent you some names, right?
That's right. You've sent me some good ones. Absolutely. Some of the best ones, actually. But at any rate. All right. So, John, you've been on the show before, and we talked about, your starting out days. You worked at Moody Radio. You were at Focus on the Family. You did all kinds of work, I want to say, in the Protestant world. And then when you became Orthodox, you came over and, just remind me again, like what was it that got you going on Ancient Faith Radio? What made you start Ancient Faith Radio?
Yeah. See, we have to go back to the spring of 2004. I was at a Touchstone conference. Touchstone, for those of you who don't know it, is a journal of mere Christianity. It is not specifically Orthodox, but they have Orthodox editors, Protestant editors, and Catholic editors. And it just represents classical Christianity and the best expression of the three traditions. So I was at the conference. I actually was the chairman of the board at that time of Touchstone. And a pastor, a Protestant pastor who was attending, who was a long time, very good friend of mine, even at my Moody days way back in the early 80s. He was on a journey to Orthodoxy, and he parenthetically is now an Antiochian Orthodox priest, Father Wilbur Ellsworth. And then Pastor Wilbur Ellsworth said, John, you've got all these years of experience in radio. You've been, working at Moody Radio. You've worked at Focus on the Family. Isn't there a way you can use that experience for the Orthodox Church? And, my first response was, well, I wish that was possible, but in reality, there's no more radio stations that we can secure. I mean, all of the good frequencies in major markets are taken. You may be able to buy an FM station in a market the size of Chicago, but it's going to cost you $250 million and maybe even more now. And so I didn't have any idea how. I loved the idea, and I was passionate about trying to figure it out, but I sure didn't know how to do it. But it troubled me, and I really tossed and turned, and Tanya and I talked about it the next day. So what could it be? And so the internet was certainly alive and well. It wasn't what it has become, for good or bad, but there were, you could do Google searches for online radio stations. Sure. And so I found this all Southern Gospel Quartet internet radio station. And I knew some of these names, the Statesman Quartet, the Blackwood Brothers, and I was a fan back in my late teens and early 20s of Southern Gospel quartets. So I clicked on it, and they had an image on the screen with a curtain that opened up, and then you see this still silhouette of a quartet with microphones singing, and the station would start playing. So I listened to it for about a half hour. I thought, the quality of this is quite good. It was stereo. It wasn't noisy. It was clear. And then the announcer comes on to, promote, you're listening to All Quartet Radio. And I thought to myself, I know that voice. And hanging around national religious broadcasters, you get to know virtually every Christian broadcaster there is. And I knew that voice was the voice of Carl Ramsey. So I contacted Carl, who was my old friend from NRB, and I said, Carl, come on, is that you? And he said, it sure is. And I said, well, you've got to tell me how you're doing this. I said, I have no clue. And so he graciously sent me several lists of software and hardware and a primer on how to get started in a very basic level. So, I mean, the whole thing looked like it was going to cost maybe around $3,000. And it's not money we had. So we decided to get a small second mortgage on our house and use that money to purchase some computers and microphones and an extra computer to stream onto. And so I got the software. Then we needed music. We didn't have any music. So I went to our church, which at that point was All Saints Antiochian Church in Chicago.
Right.
Father Pat Reardon was the priest. And I made an announcement at coffee hour. I said, I've got a crazy idea. It's not going to make sense to anybody, but I think we may be able to start our own Orthodox Christian radio station, but I need CDs. If any of you have Orthodox music, could you bring them to church next Sunday? I'm thinking, well, we may get 15 of them, and that'll give us a start. Well, don't you know, the next week, these people come in with shopping bags full of Orthodox music. And I mean, there had to be 200 CDs in there. And
Wow.
I mean, I was shocked. And so the term is you rip them into your computer. So you're basically digitizing a CD format, which was easy to do. And so now I've got a database of digital Orthodox music. I found the software that Carl recommended to actually stream. I found a service that you can buy slots. And so you can decide what the bit rate is, what quality do you want. You could be AM quality, AM station quality at 24-bit, or FM quality at 64-bit, or CD quality at 128 kilobits per minute. So I chose 64, and I chose 10 slots. So 10 people could listen to my station all at the same time, but no more. And so we got the music in there, I got the software, and I just hit the play button and just sent out an email to the church people. I said, here's the URL. Can anyone hear this? What does it sound like? So people called me, emailed, and said, wow, this sounds amazing. And I said, well, I think it's going to work, but we need to spread the word. So starting in our little parish, people just started sending emails and calling their friends, and I can watch, okay, I'm up to my 10 limit. So I needed to call the streaming service, and I say, okay, I want to go from 10 to 25. And so within 3 days, the 25 were used up. And so I called them again. I said, I'm going to need 50. Within another 2 or 3 days, it's used up. And so I keep calling the streaming service back, and they said, we're hearing from you a lot, asking us to increase the number of slots. What's your format? And I said, well, we're playing the hits, the best hits of the 90s. And he said, oh, I love the 90s. And he started naming some groups from the 90s. And I said, oh, no, the 90s. I said, this is ancient Christian music. And so, I mean, before long, we needed several hundred, and then even unlimited slots, and that's how it grew. It went on the air over Thanksgiving weekend, 2004, and it just kept growing. And then the costs, because those streaming slots are expensive, so we ask anybody who would like to donate. And so I got a call from a church secretary who said, hey, my pastor heard something on your station, and he wants to know how he can get a copy of that talk that you aired. Because I had connected with Orthodox Christian Cassettes, and they had sent me a library of lectures, Thomas Hopko, etc. And so I said, oh, yeah, so that was so-and-so giving a talk at St. Vladimir's or wherever. And I said, hey, so who's your pastor? Oh, you mean, no, I said, who's your priest? And because I didn't know. And she said, oh, you mean our pastor? it's Pastor Mark here at Grace Baptist Church in, wherever. And I said, wait a minute.
No way.
I have the pastor of this Baptist church now listening to us. And that just was the beginning. I started hearing from pastors who were in the closet, so to speak, listening and didn't dare let their parishioners know that they were addicted to this Orthodox teaching and music and were hungry for more. And so, lo and behold, some donations started coming in and we kept growing. And then I needed to be able to give tax deductible receipts for the donations because we were not a nonprofit. So I approached Father Pat and the parish council at All Saints and proposed to them that they bring Ancient Faith Radio under the church's umbrella as a ministry of All Saints Church. And they not only voted to do that without my requesting it, they voted to reimburse me for the initial investment. And I remember that meeting just like it was yesterday. And I wept. I mean, you just see that they believed that this was possible, and they made it possible. So, so we went that way for about a year, and I got a call from Father Peter Gilquist and Deacon Michael Hyatt. Deacon Michael was the chairman of the board of Conciliar Press. Father Peter was the missions and evangelism chair for the Antiochian Archdiocese and was kind of the person in charge of Conciliar Press. And they said, John, we want to propose a merger. We have heard about Ancient Faith Radio. We listen. We think that we could benefit each other by merging. So we went to our parish council, Father Pat, et cetera. They agreed. And I went to the Antiochian convention in Montreal in October, I think, or maybe July of 2008. And Charles Agelat and I chased around Metropolitan Philip all around the conference. And, and Father Charles is saying, Your Eminence, I really do want to take a few minutes and introduce you to John Maddox. Yes, Charles, we will do this. We will do this. So finally, on the last day, we had the meeting. And so, bless his heart, he didn't have a clue who I was or what I was doing. All he knew is that Charles and Father Peter Gilquist were behind this, and they want to merge. And therefore, if that's what they want, I bless this. And so we became a ministry of Conciliar Media Ministries, which was a department of the Antiochian Archdiocese. And I won't go into the detail of how they're set up because it's not a usual department. It's got independence. It's got its own 501c3. But we are loosely connected in the sense that the Antiochian Metropolitan approves board members. So if we have a new board member, we then give him the name and a resume, and then he'll just basically stamp it and say, yes, you may add that board member. So that's how we became part of Conciliar. And then in 2009, we changed the name to Ancient Faith Ministries, Ancient Faith Publishing, Ancient Faith Press. The board asked me to be the CEO of both. And that's kind of the history.
That's amazing. It's so funny because I know I started listening probably 2005 or 6, something like that, because a friend of mine told me about it. I had assumed you had been going forever. Like, it just seemed like, you guys were just very smooth and everything looked great. And it was so funny years later, in fact, probably as you were retiring and we were all talking about the history of it, I was like, wait, so that had just started. That's amazing.
Well, and the funny thing was it occupied an upstairs bedroom in our home in Chesterton. And so I got this call from a large school group, Orthodox school group from a church school. And they said, we want to bring our students to tour your radio station. And they're imagining, this edifice with hundreds of employees. And I said, well, you are absolutely welcome to come, but you need to know that there's nobody here but Tanya and me. And You'll be basically going through our kitchen up the stairs to the bedroom. And I don't think I could fit all your kids in, but maybe we could take them in shifts. And so, they came, about 25 kids, and they seemed to enjoy it, but it was the shortest tour I think they've ever had. So.
Yeah. But, it's really amazing, right? Because as you were saying at the beginning, if you really wanted a traditional radio station, right, it's millions of dollars to get a spot on these limited range of frequencies. And then you would need a building and you would need all of this equipment. And it wouldn't be a $3,000 or $4,000 investment.
No.
It would be a really big deal.
I mean, that was my life.
Opens this up.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did for 35 years. We had towers and transmitters and buildings and staff. And, the thing is, for Orthodox, as an immigrant Christian faith, coming into the United States, Orthodox people were late, very late in the game of Christian media because they were too busy trying to make a living for their family, and they weren't thinking about, well, how can we start this multi-million-dollar ministry and do media? But in the meantime, the evangelicals and the Catholics, I mean, they were all over that 75 years earlier.
Right.
So they got all the frequencies, the programs, the attention, and the Orthodox people were left in the dust. But what leveled the playing field was internet radio. And now, I mean, I will put our studio equipment up against any station. The quality of the equipment that's being used in the studio. I mean, if you should see our new studio. And the cost of those things have come way down, digital media, and you don't need a transmitter, you don't need a tower, you don't need a 5-story building. We have a new suite that has basically 2 studios, an office, and an open space, but it's very professionally laid out and A1 quality equipment to get us the best sound we can get.
That's fantastic. Well, even the old studio with just the one studio and the sort of anteroom in front of it, right? Like that was, it was beautiful. It's getting it's big time, it's very neat.
Yeah.
I bet you would be, if you were to tell yourself 20 years ago, or I guess 18 years ago after it had started, that you would need 2 studios, right? Like 2 studios for what? Like what are we gonna...
I can remember taking a walk with my wife at our Chesterton home, and I was still working for Moody. It was about 2007, and Ancient Faith had been on for about 3 years, but more as a hobby. Because I was busy, in being paid full time for radio. So Tanya was doing all of the production work, and I would come home at night or on the weekends and tweak some things. But it was automated, and so I can remember saying to Tanya on the walk, wouldn't it be amazing if someday, somehow, this ministry could support us full time? And we both looked at each other and said, nah, that's not going to happen. Ye of little faith.
That's right. Well, I mean, and it has turned into, it's an amazing thing. I can't tell you how often I meet people in my parish who are, recently heard about orthodoxy and now they're catechumens and they're going through and, they all know about Lord of the Spirits and they all know about Ancient Faith Radio. And it's just beautiful because back when you first started it, I know I converted in 1998.
Yep.
There were not a lot of books in English. Let alone, internet content or being able to listen to a sermon from a really great priest.
That's right.
That was out of the question. I'm amazed that there were 200 CDs of Orthodox music at the time that you started. I'm amazed that there were that many people making Orthodox music.
Yeah. Well, and 90% of them were foreign language, of course. So they were coming in from Greece and Russia and Romania and Serbia. And I mean, we didn't have enough English language music to play an hour's worth of an internet station. But now we have a full-time English music channel, because more and more CDs have been, and music has been produced.
That's amazing. And wonderful. Yeah, it's interesting to me because there have been a few times where I've been asked to write something for the Journal of the Moscow Patriarchate.
Mhm.
And one of the books, from ancient faith get translated into Romanian,
Yeah.
and into Russian, and into Greek. And it's so amazing that we have gone from being full-time consumers of foreign content to now all of a sudden, we have sort of this, they're aware of us, they know about us, and they're looking at American converts and saying, oh, we'd like a copy of that book. Could we translate that book? And that's really all ancient faith. And it's this whole movement that started, right? Like once you gave a space for it, and then incorporating conciliar and sort of putting those two together, all of a sudden there's this space for something to grow, and all these people just stepped into that void. It's beautiful.
Well, and it certainly began a lot of ancient faith content, but as the river rises, it raises all the boats, and so Saint Vladimir's and Sebastian, and I mean, you name it. There are now several quality Orthodox publishers producing books in music, and God bless them. I mean, you can't have too much. It's just, and we each have our own niche, and we make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a neat thing. And then you started doing the conferences, and you started the Ancient Faith Writers and Podcasters Conference. And I think that's been really neat too, because you get all these people who are like, well, I'm not really a writer, but I'm kind of thinking it would be interesting. And then before you know it, they've published a couple of fantastic books, and they've made this wonderful contribution. And just thank God it's all sort of exploding all together. Yeah. And it really, in the end, it's just about telling people about Orthodoxy.
Yeah, that's it.
We didn't have to make anything up. It's just talking about it in English so that they can understand it, putting it out there somewhere that they would find it, and boom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you just hit on the key. It's self-selling. I mean, once you know the history, you can't help but embrace it. I mean, I can remember Father Pat saying, you give someone an Orthodox study Bible, and if they are willing to read it, they'll be Orthodox within a year. And so what happens is if you connect people to the English language that they know and appreciate, and provide them content that is able to put the cookies on a shelf where they can reach them. Because we're not all seminary grads, and I think that's one area that I think ancient faith can play a role, perhaps more than other publishers, and that is to make it available to the layperson and make it explainable. The church fathers, I mean, we all know the ladder of divine ascent and what a wonderful resource that is. A lot of us read that and we struggle with understanding. So here comes another book called 30 Steps to Heaven, which is written in today's language, which takes the same concepts. And Papa Vasiliou writes this in a way that's very understandable in English, and it gives you that resource that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, and that's really, I feel like that is sort of the niche for ancient faith, right? Is the lay audience, the people who are not theologians, who are not like reading the fathers as a hobby on the side, but who are in fact really quite busy and don't really understand a lot of the higher level academic stuff.
And if you had to be an academia or a theologically astute individual, Orthodoxy would be not reachable for most of us. Most of Orthodox people work in the factory, they work in the office, they're doctors, lawyers, they vets. And so for those of us who have not been seminary trained, we want to provide a resource that can make it available and accessible to all.
I love that. I love the whole mission of ancient faith. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so actually we're going to take a very short break. I want to remind our audience, you're welcome to call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. We will be right back with John Maddox. And I want to let you know, you can call. You can also make comments on the YouTube channel, just like we have an Australian friend, John, who's saying hello. So hello from Australia to John. We'll be right back right after this message.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
Good Night, Child of God is a new children's bedtime book revealing the kingdom of heaven all around us. Enjoy and share this calming bedtime companion on the journey to sweet dreams. Good Night, Child of God is now available at store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bielatich Davis, and we are speaking tonight with Mr. John Maddox, founder of Ancient Faith Radio. And of course, you're welcome to call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346. But so, John, we were just talking about how we needed Orthodox literature for lay people and podcasts for lay people and just sort of resources for people who don't already come in knowing the language of theology and all of these things. And I think that that's such an important mission. And it's interesting too, because, Orthodox theologians, I think, will tell you it's not meant to be heady, right? It's not meant to be just an intellectual thing. I mean, there is an intellectual aspect to theology, of course, always, but ultimately Orthodoxy is meant to be this very simple, beautiful, lived faith. But I really think for an American audience, it's so, they don't think of it. They walk into an Orthodox church. The word that comes to mind is not simple, right?
Yeah, right.
It seems like it's so complicated and so over the top. And so it is really a beautiful thing to have these resources to translate it into English in many ways, to translate it into American.
Yeah, thank God. I mean, the beauty of Orthodoxy, the treasure of Orthodoxy is immediately wonderful, but it gets more wonderful the deeper you go. So.
Oh, it's so true. It is really true. And thank God for it. Well, and one thing, I do have a question for you. I feel like it is so interesting about ancient faith. And another thing that I like about ancient faith is I feel like part of the mission is to stay out of politics, to stay out of going too far astray of anything. Like, let's, eyes on Christ, right? Eyes on the gospel. And let's be talking about that. And I know sometimes people will get upset because they, I know that there have been podcasters who were getting very political, and that is not really where ancient faith is meant to be. So that's not the direction ancient faith is taking. But I want to hear you talk about that a little bit, just about the idea of what is the mission of Ancient Faith Radio? Why is that kind of incompatible with politics? For anyone who has been troubled by those sorts of questions, to hear what the logic of it is.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I understand those who wonder about that and have a concern. I think it's important to remember that Ancient Faith Radio is a worldwide ministry, first of all. We're not only in this American milieu where all people know about and think about is what's happening in our political realm and socially, etc. We have listeners in 145 countries, and they don't tune in to Ancient Faith Radio to hear about the presidential election or to be lectured about the far right or the far left or even the near right or the near left. What they came for is the gospel. And they want to hear about Christ. They want to hear about this treasure of Orthodoxy and how it has been survived for 2 centuries plus, 2 millennia plus, and without change. I mean, how is that possible? And so we, from the very beginning, and I actually got this policy from Moody. I was the gatekeeper for Moody Broadcasting for the programs. So any person who wanted to teach or preach on Moody Radio, and this is before I was Orthodox, their content, I had to approve it. And then once they were on, we had to check it. We had to make sure that it wasn't drifting into a political realm. And we did have some who were very passionate, and God bless them for their passion. I understand and appreciate that. But they were assuming that all of our listeners checked a certain box. And so they would speak in ways that would make that assumption. And we would hear from others saying, wait a minute, I have to be that to be Orthodox, or to be Christian. This is Moody.
Right.
I had to be that political party to be a Christian. And what we found is politics was frankly barricading the cross. That's what it came down for. People had to go through, people have to go through a political gate to get to Jesus, there is something dramatically wrong with that. And so we made it clear, and I actually took some of the wording from my days at Moody to create our policy at Ancient Faith. We're not saying don't be politically active. We're not saying don't have opinions about politics. I have my opinions. You have your opinions. I have no idea if they merge or not. They may or may not. But we don't need to put that on our sleeve in the media if our purpose is to show people Christ. Christ did not ride into town on a Republican or a Democratic animal, okay? He was on a donkey.
Technically, it was a donkey.
but there were no politics involved. So I mean that, and I appreciate that people can disagree with that. And you know, we used to say in radio, well, the dial works both ways. You know, you don't have to listen. No. Nobody's got a gun to your head to say you got to listen to this podcast. Don't listen. I mean, if there are people that rub you the wrong way, maybe try something else or try another network. Or there are sources now where you can be Orthodox and very liberal or very conservative, far right, far left, and that's welcomed there. But we're not going to barricade the cross at Ancient Faith. I mean, we want to be positive and clear and send people to Christ. That's our goal.
I love that. And I think we need places in America. Frankly, as Americans, we need places where we can go and not hear about politics, because the truth is just about everywhere you go, it is. And there's a lot of dissent, and there's a lot of polarization and anger. And that's not actually very Christian, all this anger, right?
Yeah.
But when you talk about international audiences, you're absolutely right. We have so many people in other countries, and you think about it, first of all, they probably don't know the ins and outs of American politics or care about it. But not only that, you're talking about people who may not have access to other Orthodox content very easily, right? Or that maybe it's illegal there. Maybe they don't have a church. Maybe it just isn't present there for other reasons. But they really need access. And I think that that's a great point. And I think it's one that people don't too often think about. I try to say, even when I introduce this program, I'm like, here in North America, we're split into jurisdictions. I don't know how it is where you are, but here, I've got all these different people next to each other, because who knows, right?
Well, and it's important to be a little more clear from our standpoint of what do we mean by politics. So when people say you're not political, does that mean you don't take a stand on abortion, or you don't take a stand on same-sex marriage, or you don't take a stand on what the church clearly teaches? And for us, that's not politics. That's the church's teaching. So we don't hesitate to affirm what the church has always taught about those issues. And we're not ashamed of that, because that is not political. That is clearly taught by the church. And the church affirms that, and therefore we affirm it. And our policy does state exactly that. The things that the church has clearly stated, we stand behind and we will defend, and we will not muzzle any of our content providers in speaking about those issues.
Right. Absolutely. And the truth is that the church doesn't have teaching on every single American politics issue.
It just doesn't.
So, in those areas where there is such a thing, that's a Christian question and not necessarily a political question. The fact that it's also political in the U.S. doesn't mean that it's inherently political, which is a different thing.
Yeah, and let me just give you an example. So at Moody, we had a broadcaster who was starting to get very political. And I said the same thing to them. I said, we are anti-abortion. We don't promote same-sex marriage. We are clearly on the same page on those issues. But what you want to talk about on your program, which you cannot do, are things like China trade policy, term limits for congressmen, welfare reform. I mean, those things are off base. Those are political, and you cannot go there.
Yeah, and there are no canons on any of those things.
No,
there just aren't. But so now I have another topic for you.
Yep.
I want to know, what have you been doing since you retired?
Yeah.
I feel like you and Tanya traveled a bit, because every time I'm trying to schedule this interview, you seem to be out of town. So tell me, have you been traveling around and enjoying yourself?
Yeah. So here's the story. For most of our married life, Tanya has systematically and routinely begged me to get a camper. She camped when she grew up, and we did not. And so, John, can we buy just a pop-up camper or a tent? And, I couldn't see myself doing it. I had zero interest in it. And, so we didn't all those years. So about 2 years ago, we're starting to think about what we're going to do in retirement. And we have 2 dogs, and we love to travel. But we don't want to board the dogs every time we travel. We want to take them with us. So I said, we're on this walk here in our little neighborhood. And I said, hon, I'm thinking maybe a good option for us would be to invest in an RV. I mean, she stopped in her tracks, looked at me, and she said, "Shut up."
I said,
no.
You're going to introduce it like your idea.
And oh my gosh, she jumped on that before I changed my mind.
Oh yeah, I bet she had all sorts of internet listings for you.
Well, yeah. And don't you know, last July, we finally landed on a little 22-foot travel trailer. It's a couples camper. It's got a Murphy bed, a little kitchen and bathroom, shower. And a Chevy Silverado truck to pull it with.
Nice.
And so now we started 1st of August last year to get in as many camping trips as possible, because, I mean, this is old dog, new trick territory for sure. I had never camped before. I didn't have a clue how to do it. So we just researched. Tanya's sister and brother-in-law are avid campers. They helped us make some decisions. We have 2 couples from our Moody days. One of them just retired. The other still works there, who are also avid campers. And they have been incredibly helpful in teaching us tank management. I mean, if you're a camper, you know what I'm talking about. There are 3 tanks on these things: a freshwater tank, a gray tank, and a black tank. You don't want those things to mix together. So learning how to manage the tanks, learning how to back the trailer up get the ball and the hitch together, learning how to back into a campsite. And it was so many trial and errors on that. Tanya finally bought a little sign. She put it in our camper and it said, "I'm sorry what I said to you when you were trying to back up the camper." So, but I'll tell you what, I am very confident now. In our first full year, these little camping spots that you back into are not intimidating anymore. But it was not something that happened immediately. So there are 2 aspects of camping that have been very good for us. One is the physical, because it's work. Just lifting the big hitch out of the camper and putting it into your truck, because the hitch has to be substantial enough to hold anti-sway bars so your camper doesn't fishtail, and it's heavy. And so, I get exercise doing that. I get exercise climbing up on the roof, making sure there's no twigs or anything. When I bring the slide in, I'm getting exercise, tightening up the lug nuts on the tire. I mean, you're just constantly moving. And Tanya's the same way. She has her duties, I have mine, and she's taking care of the inside, I'm taking care of the outside. So by the time we get to a campsite, have it all set up, it's about 3 to 4 hours. We're tired. We're breathing nice and heavy, and it's wonderful. And then the other aspect is the mental challenge. It is the remembering. It is lists. It is the checklists are long. And you don't want to leave anything off of a checklist because it could really be harmful or even dangerous. It could harm the trailer, but you could also get hurt. And so the mental checklist, we have learned so much in this last year and a half. We did our last camping trip 2 weeks ago with some friends, and now it's time to winterize it. So there's another thing you have to learn. So now all of that to say, it's been perfect for us. The dogs love it. They go with us. They travel very well in the truck, and then they're very excited when we finally get set up. And we have a dog fence that we put up around the camper so they can be, roam around a little bit. And so it's become really part of us. And next year we're going to go after it again.
That's fantastic. What sorts of places? Where have you been? Are you going to national parks, or what are you doing?
National parks. We actually went to St. James Island National Park in Charleston, South Carolina in March of this year. We met Tanya's sister and brother-in-law there, and we spent 3 weeks with them. And it took us 2 nights just to get there. First night we stayed in Lexington, the second night in Greenville, and then finally arrived. And that was very stretching and wonderful. And so, but a lot of state parks and private campgrounds. Where we live in Northwest Indiana is the RV capital of the world. Most of these trailers are built in Elkhart, Indiana.
Yes.
And so there's actually
I forgot that, John, because when I was in Indiana last, you told me about Elkhart and you told me all about the area, and we went and drove, and we went right past some pretty huge RV places. And that's right. We learned that, didn't they invent like the Hoosier cabinets? And then they also had the RVs, because it's sort of like a cabinet specialty, right? Like
it is.
You need a whole lot of cabinets and drawers and things.
And most of them are built by Amish.
That's right.
I mean, the Amish community is thriving there. And so we toured the factory that built ours, and we couldn't get in until 2 p.m. because the Amish start work at 5 and end at 1, so they can get home and do their crops. And so it's a fascinating, and because there are so many campers in our area, there are also campgrounds. So we have no end of beautiful camping places, state parks, private. And, it's not terribly expensive. A state park, you can stay for $20 to $25 a night. And some of them have full hookups, some of them just electric. And you learn, okay, now we're at just electric. So how do we manage our tank and conserve water? Or a full hookup where you can just, keep the water running for your shower as long as you want. But all of that, there's just some wonderful places to camp. Michigan is close by. Ohio is close by. Indiana, of course. Wisconsin. So we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, and it's just the right level of challenge, right? Because it's like you're retired. You don't want to be building something from the ground up in a big business or something. But something that keeps you having to learn things and move around, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 73 years old, so I started doing this last year when I was 72, and our plan is to continue until we can't anymore, and then we'll go on to the next thing. So
it's fantastic. I love that. And so you mentioned earlier, too, that you have a little recording studio set up in your house.
Yeah.
You also told me where it was, and it's kind of funny because I used to have a recording studio in my closet, and I think you have one in yours. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, so it became obvious that there was ongoing voice work that Ancient Faith wanted me to do, mostly audiobooks for audible.com. So I have recorded 7 audiobooks now, 5 of which are out. 2 more. One was just submitted, 2 of Father Pat Reardon's books.
Good.
Reclaiming the Atonement is finished and sent on to Audible, just waiting for approval. And I'm finishing up Christ in the Psalms, which is a classic.
Oh, I love that.
And it is, and just the joy of reading that again freshly. Yeah, it's a double benefit. And and I'm just volunteering. I just love to do it. And if it's helpful, it gives me something valuable to do and work on. So we'll do that for a while, and then we'll see what else.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, and it's neat for you to be doing Father Pat's books, because did you convert with Father Pat, or was that?
Yeah. No, he brought us in, and yeah. And he was offered the opportunity to read them himself, but he's getting older, and it's just not something he wanted to do, and was happy to hear that I was going to do it. So.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to have a friend of his doing it. I like
the
idea of that.
For sure.
I like the thought of that. Yeah. How is he doing? I was just thinking about him recently. He's still doing well.
He's slowing down. He still teaches Sunday school class. Father Andrew Kishler, the priest there now, still has him teaching a class. And he was there. We were there for a chrismation. Just a fun parenthetical story. My assistant at Moody, my administrative assistant, without my knowing it, started listening to Lord of Spirits. And so I'm looking at the Facebook page of Lord of Spirits, and I see her name commenting, and it's a unique name. So I thought, it's only one Toby. And so I private messaged her. I said, "Is that you?" And she said, yep, I've actually been listening to Lord of Spirits, and so I'm really interested in Orthodoxy. So I sent her an Orthodox study Bible and a prayer book and some incense and candles and stuff. And so hadn't heard from her. And she contacted me about 2 months ago and said, "Hey, we're at All Saints in Chicago. I'm going to be chrismated, and I want you to be my sponsor." So Tanya and I went to All Saints and were her sponsor about a month and a half ago, and we saw Father Pat there, and that was a joy. But
that's beautiful. I love.
Pray for him. The years are having its toll, and especially on Korea, Denise, who's just a beautiful, lovely woman. She's struggling health-wise too, so they could both use your prayers.
We'll keep them both in our prayers then. They're wonderful. I love him. His books are wonderful too, but he's
brilliant.
And delightful.
He is brilliant.
He is. He really is. And what a great thing. And thank God, right, that we have something like Ancient Faith to be able to publish his books and to be able to spread that, because it's a wonderful thing to be a really good parish priest. That's good enough. But to be able to have that spread out, thank God.
And imagine me coming into Orthodoxy from a lifetime of evangelical Christianity, thinking that I had a corner on what the Scripture has to say. And so I am coming into Orthodoxy and meeting Father Pat for the first time, and I'm just grilling him with my presuppositions and statements about the atonement, about salvation, about eternal security, about the rapture. He just patiently listened. And I suddenly realized I am in over my head here. This man has forgotten more Scripture than I've ever learned. And he was, I said it then, I'll say it now. He was the most profound biblical scholar I had ever met, whether evangelical or Orthodox. Just in terms of his knowledge of Scripture, his ability to make it clear and teach it, and to tie the whole gospel message, Old Testament and New, together. And that's what reclaiming the atonement and Christ in the Psalms both do that. So I can't recommend them highly enough.
That's beautiful. And that's such an important thing, tying the Old Testament and the New Testament.
It is.
Because I think, so often we start to move into this idea that, that the Old Testament is this different sort of angry God, and then the New Testament's this whole other thing, and there's no connection there. And it really isn't that way. In fact, we're teaching the Old Testament in Sunday school, and I had a teacher saying, we should teach Christ instead. Like, let's not teach No. This is Christ.
What did Christ do on the road to Emmaus as the apostles didn't recognize him, and he opened the Scriptures and began to teach them about himself? Well, what Scriptures were those? Those were the Old Testament prophets and Psalms, and showed them, here is where I am in these passages of Scripture.
I had a friend of mine who's evangelical said to me recently, I'm so frustrated that it doesn't say what he said when he opened the scriptures. And I'm like, well, you know what he said.
Yeah.
We do actually have some stuff out there. It's called Holy Tradition. But
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, thank God. What a beautiful faith. You know, how lucky both you and I are to have
Really
come into this.
Yeah. I mean, I wish it was earlier in life, but in God's timing, that's when it needed to be for us. I was 50 when I was chrismated, and had lifelong evangelical, and now here I am, 23 years later, still like a baby, learning and new things all the time.
Yeah, 23 years later, I've been Orthodox longer than you.
Yeah. Well, you said 98.
Yeah, 98. But it is amazing how much there is to learn and how much one grows in 23 years.
Yeah.
I have found that it's shocking, actually. But I'm so glad that you didn't find it sooner, because you needed to build up all that experience, right? Like, you needed to do all of that so that you would have those tools and then bring it to his church.
I mean, that's the preparation. That's the way I have to look at it, that God was preparing me for something else. And that's not that what I was doing was worthless or of no avail, but it was all preparatory for what I've been able to do now since 2004. So.
And isn't that just amazing? I mean, just to think about, all of the ways that here you were 50 when you became Orthodox, and look at all that you accomplished in just those 23 years. I want to let you know that we do have a comment on YouTube saying that you should go to Arkansas. There are some beautiful parks in Arkansas that you need to visit.
All right.
I think that's true.
I'm in.
It's actually very, very true. And also, very quickly, John Shelton, who is a friend of mine in North Carolina, has a question for you. What advice would you give to aspiring content creators and young people who want to speak publicly about their faith?
Yeah.
He's talking about himself, because he'd be.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for being interested in doing that. We talk about the Great Commission. The Great Commission is go and preach. We say come and see. No, it is come and see, but there are some verbs involved here with go, teach, baptize. So thank you for your willingness to try to hone those skills. The next Writers and Podcasters Conference, all I can say is get there. You will learn so much from other content providers, both existing and budding. And so that is a great place to share ideas and grow and learn. Listen a lot. Listen to as many podcasts as you can, whether on Ancient Faith Radio or some other source. Find out, what is appealing about that communication style and what is unappealing? How would I do it differently? And be creative. Talking heads are fine. I mean, Father Thomas Hopko was a talking head, and he was amazing. But today, people want to hear a little more creativity. They want to hear some background noises. They want to hear some stories. They want to be taken to places and feel like they're there with you. So be creative and look for ways to share that message in new, innovative, and creative ways without watering down the message or changing the message in any way. We don't change it. So that would be my advice. Read, consume all you can, and then imagine yourself communicating. How would you do it uniquely and differently?
I love that. And John, really do listen to that advice and do it, because you'd be great. I love John. John's been on this show, actually.
Oh, cool.
And he's a teacher, Sunday school teacher. And
nice.
It'd be fantastic.
Go for it, John.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. It is just so good to hear your voice again. I'm going to have to pick up some of the audiobooks because I like your voice very much, of course. But no, it's really a joy to get to catch up with you and to hear how you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I mean, one of the things I'm most thankful for at Ancient Faith are the people like you that God sent to us, because we didn't know anybody and we were begging people to do something. Can you record your sermon? Can you read these sayings of the church fathers? And what we discovered is orthodoxy is rich with talented communicators. And so he brought you to us. There's no doubt in my mind. And look at what you're doing now with the variety of podcasts and target audiences. I mean, you are a treasure at Ancient Faith, and we're so thankful for you. And I would say the same to all of our program producers and podcasters. Thank you for taking a risk with us and for sharing your skills of communication to teach people the Orthodox faith and draw them toward it.
Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. And thank you for just by creating this space for people, right? The more a few people start and then a few people more, and we all hear each other and we go, oh, I could do that, but maybe I would do this. And then before you know it, this is a beautiful community of amazing, creative Orthodox people. And it's been a joy to be a part of it. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll say it couldn't be in better hands now after I retired with Melinda Johnson's leadership as the new CEO and the executive team she has under her. They are a top-notch Class A team, and we have the best years ahead as far as I'm concerned with AFR. So.
Glory to God. Thank you so much.
Yep.
John.
Yeah, you bet. God bless.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience. Thank you for joining us. Come back next Sunday night to meet another everyday Orthodox Christian. Good night.